Okay, so the class is being recorded. Good afternoon, everyone. This is me, Dr. Sameh, and this is AA100A. Before the recording, or before I kind of pressed the recording button, we were talking about the MTA and what you did and what you didn't, and I said that I'm hopeful, inshallah, that you're going to make me proud with the essay part. Okay, so what is it that we're doing today? We're moving places, we're moving books, as a matter of fact. We're moving from the first book, Reputations, to the second one, and the second one is Tradition and Dissent. Very highly intellectual book, and of course, like I said, we don't have the luxury to do all the chapters. That's why we're being highly selective with the chapters that we have in both books, as a matter of fact. So the chapters or the units that we have done in book one were 3. Remind me or alert me, because sometimes I confuse courses. We did Cleopatra,
Christopher Marlowe, Divya, and Diva.
And the Diva. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and this is the end of it. That would mark the end of book one and the start of book two. Like I said, book two is has a totally different theme and a totally different topic, which is the idea of tradition. We'll talk more about what tradition entails and what it means, and also the idea of dissent. So you're either a traditionalist or a dissenter, or a dissenting individual. We'll talk about them, and we have, of course, we're going to have illustrations through the different chapters that we have assigned for you in book two. So it's tradition and dissent, everyone. We will have 3 chapters or 3 units. I don't know whether we have. Yeah, I keep forgetting whether they are chapters or units. So we have 3 units this time around. One of them is philosophy. We're going to do a bit of philosophy. And one of them is on poetry. And the third would be on English Christianity. So when you look at them, you see how diverse this course is. You see how, you see and feel how how this course is introducing you and exposing you to varieties in terms of genres, in terms of subject matters and themes. Some of them are political, some of them are philosophical, historical, artistic, when we spoke about the diva and opera. This is amazing. This is an amazing course, and it never fails to kind of entertain me. Every time I have to choose between courses, I choose this course because it adds. Every time I teach it, it kind of adds insights and value to me personally. I'm hopeful that you're enjoying it as much as I am. Again, like I said, we're starting with philosophy in the second book, and the philosophy part that we're having would include people like Plato, Socrates, some of their philosophies and their techniques when it comes to engaging other people in conversations about philosophy and other stuff. Again, that would require of us to, first of all, unpack the term philosophy, unpack the term philosopher, get to know some of the philosophers that we're going to study together, what philosophy entails and what kind of methods philosophers use in order to engage their audience, to engage their readers and their interlocutors. So this is, again, this is going to be very interesting, a little bit heavy-handed because obviously philosophy is not for everyone. Philosophy is, you know, very intellectual. You would need to use your mind and think deeply about the issues and the arguments presented. You need to come up with your own conclusions. You need to use inductive reasoning rather than deductive reasoning. You need to know about the different, you know, branches of philosophy. For example, whether we're talking about ontology or epistemology. And when we talk about epistemology, we talk about the different sources of knowledge, how we receive knowledge, and what is knowledge in the first place. So they may seem a little bit highbrowish and complicated, but when you come to read them and think about them, you find them very empowering. You find them tools that you can use in life. Of course, you cannot talk about philosophy without talking about logic. And logic is a tool that you use in order to kind of check whether what you're saying and what other people are saying is logical, is making sense or not. And that would also bring us to something out of the scope of the course, which is logical fallacies. And I'll perhaps dedicate some time for logical fallacies next time. This is not part of the course, but I find it very useful and I find it very kind of educational for you. I mean, you can use it in your real life. But this is not happening today. We'll talk about it next time. Let me share the slides and we are on our way, inshallah. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, Doctor.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the unit that we're having. I think I need to check. I keep saying units, and it may be chapters, and I keep saying chapters, and they may seem, they may be units. So it says, well, it doesn't say, doesn't say whether it's a chapter or a unit. It only gives me the title of the book. The first book, what's that? No, the remaining chapters of book 2. So it, we were correct in saying that they are chapters rather than units. So this is the first chapter that we have in book 2, and let me just remind you of the title of book 2. Book 2, like I said, is tradition and dissent. Okay, so we're going to start off with kind of unpacking the title of the book and then proceed to the chapter that we're having today. So tradition, when I say tradition, what comes to your mind? In other words, what is tradition?
Something old.
Yeah, something old. That's interesting. Yeah, something. Okay, this something is what?
Actions and beliefs.
actions and beliefs. Yeah, that's interesting. Like what? Let's talk about those beliefs and actions and practices that we consider old and traditional. So what is it that we do that we consider tradition? What is it that we look at and we consider tradition?
Leaves,
Our beliefs, yeah,
customs.
because they are old and yes, and we practice them, yeah, of course. Our customs and our habits, our rituals, the way we do stuff, right? So this is tradition, okay. And from your observations, do you think people stick to tradition, or yani how much and how far do people stick to tradition?
Sometimes people don't. They don't stick with
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
They
that's
go beyond.
interesting. I mean, the idea that you're saying, yeah, you're saying sometimes. Okay, so obviously sometimes means that for, I mean, people often stick to tradition. I wouldn't say always, right? Or usually. Let's say often. Yeah, in most of the cases, you have people sticking to and following tradition, right? I mean, they have traditional clothes. They you know kind of wear what their perhaps parents and their grandparents are wearing. They don't normally change that. What else? We also have music is also tradition that you also inherit from the old times. You normally have your own traditional music. You know, for the most part, people hear it, but sometimes, you know, because of the universality of human experience now, you people don't stick to traditional music anymore. They find it perhaps long and boring, right? Um,
Traditional dances as well.
Traditional dances, yes, yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So let me ask you this question. Do you think tradition is universal? So our tradition in the Arab world, for example, or in the Middle East, or in the South, because we're South and Europe and the Americas are the North. So in the South, do you think that our tradition are similar to those sets of tradition in the West?
No, no. I think that it differs, or they differ.
No?
Yes. So tradition is not universal. Universal means that all people in all the world share the same tradition, which is obviously what you're saying is that this is not true, right? So tradition is exclusive. Every culture, can I say that every culture has its own set of tradition or sets of tradition?
Yes, we can say that.
Yes, absolutely. That's why you have you know, in the West they have their own music. Here we have our own music. In India they have their own music, right? The way we dress are different, obviously. The way our eating and dietary habits are different. There are things that we don't eat, for example, as Muslims, but there are things that they eat, right? And we don't eat. This is also tradition. Okay. So, do we think about our tradition? Do we, before I wear something, for example, a thobe or a galabeya back home, for example, do I every every time I go home and kind of change my clothes, do I think about what I am going to wear or what I wore already?
No, because it's a habit.
Yeah, we take them for granted. We don't challenge them. Normally, we don't challenge whatever comes to us from the past, right? Either because we don't have time or because we respect those manifestations of tradition. Okay, because they come to us from people that we admire and respect and value, our grandparents, and right. So we don't normally think twice about our tradition. Sometimes there are tradition or there are sets of tradition that we find a little bit strange, and they are strange because we think that they are out of sync with reality, with our modern reality. Don't you sometimes think this way? I mean, an item of tradition from the past, but you don't think it really applies to our modern context. Can you think of examples of things that, yeah, we hold them dear and near to our heart because they are tradition, and they come to us, we inherit them from people that we love and everything, but we don't think that they are practical, that they are implementable in our modern context. We think that they are, don't we sometimes use the word old-fashioned when we refer to something? Too traditional for my taste,
Yes.
right? Don't you? We don't, kind of listen to traditional music anymore. Most of us.
I do.
Uh, yeah, you do. That's interesting. But I'm talking about if perhaps somebody is recommending a song by Kulthum, for example. Obviously, Kulthum is traditional, music, right? Lots of people don't like Kulthum, and when you kind of push them and you say that she's lovely, just give her the benefit of the doubt. You're going to enjoy her voice and all these kinds of things. You just uh, stop him or her saying that, yeah, this is not my one of my preferences, for example, right? Look at traditional, hairstyles. Obviously, in the past, people used to have their hair cut in a certain way, and obviously it's different now, right? And again, if your father is or your parents are imposing a certain hairstyle or a certain haircut, you would simply you can say no. I don't like it this way, right? So there are elements of tradition. This is what I'm trying to drive home. There are elements of tradition that the modern generation or the young generation does not agree with, does not think that they should follow like their parents did, right? Um, so the idea of following tradition, do you think this is more of a calculated practice, something that you think about, something that you use your mind for? You judge tradition using your mind, or you take things for granted, accept them as is? I'm asking you.
Usually we take it for granted.
Yes. Yeah, we do. Yes, we normally
Yes, maybe
take them.
I'm
Yeah.
losing my.
So what happens when you see somebody uh, all the time questioning those sets of tradition, keep saying, no, no, this is not rational. This is not reasonable. Why would I follow? Haven't you seen people like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
They challenge tradition. I mean, tradition in its, um, you know, what I'm trying to say is that we're talking about different facets of tradition, including religion, including our cultural legacy, and all these kinds of. So we do have people who say no. I'm not going to accept that because it does not belong with us in the modern times. This is something that may have applied there in the past, but it doesn't make sense now, right? So those people use their mind for the most part. They say no. Everything they think about everything in terms of reason and mind. Okay, I would accept this piece of tradition because it my mind accepts it, and I would not accept this one because my mind say this is superstitious, this is it doesn't make sense and stuff like that. How do we normally look at people who do not accept tradition? Let's talk about people who, for the most part, don't accept the culture. We have, in our midst people who behave in a way that we think not in keeping with our culture. They behave in a Western way. They, I mean, the way they dress, the way they have their haircut, and everything in between. How do the majority look at them for the most part?
Maybe
How do we, yeah, go
maybe
ahead.
we
No,
think
you're cutting the Ghadir.
I am Ragad.
Ragad, I'm sorry,
I
Ragad.
think that,
I was
yes, I
saying
think
that we maybe see them as rebellious.
Yeah, we see them as rebellious.
Yeah.
We see them as so instead of using the word rebellious, we're going to use the word dissenters or dissenting, and for our purposes in this chapter. So, hence the word dissent. Remember the title? It was tradition and dissent. So, tradition means that you stick to and follow those old practices, and dissent means that you challenge those old practices. Okay, so this is the main idea in the chapter and also in the other chapters. Okay, so what is it? What is it that we're going to either follow or kind of deviate from and challenge? There is material in the book or in the chapter that we're going to either follow or dissent against. This material is called, or those values are called moral values. So, moral values. So, you have values, and those values have to do with morality. Morality, of course, means behaving in a correct or an upright way. Correct means that there is a set of teachings and codes that you have to go by and follow. If you don't, in this case, you are not following those you're not moral in one way or another. So the idea is about traditional beliefs and whether those traditional beliefs should be accepted as they are or be challenged because people think that they are not realistic or reasonable and rational and everything. But this is what we're going to talk about. Okay, so we're going to talk about traditional beliefs, and those traditional beliefs have the word tradition in them, which means that they come to us from the past. And for the most part, the majority of population in every culture embrace those traditional beliefs. They adopt them, they use them to regulate their life. Again, you'll have a bunch of people who would say, listen, stop. It's good that we have traditional beliefs and everything, but did you test them? Did you check whether they are applicable to our modern context or not? Do you think that they are practical enough? They are rational enough? Right? So this is what we're doing. And we're using philosophy in order to test those traditional beliefs. So philosophy is going to be our tool, okay, in order to judge whether those traditional beliefs are practical enough or not, whether we can keep them or just ignore them, okay? So philosophy, like I said, philosophy is going to be our tool. And philosophy is all about using the mind. Okay? So philosophy, everyone. And again, like I said, philosophy, so moral beliefs will be the material, would be the ideas, and philosophy would be the tool through which we're going to see whether to keep those moral beliefs or just avoid them and ignore them. Okay. Perhaps a bit about philosophy and what philosophy means is due here. So when I talk about philosophy, what comes to your mind?
Greece, maybe.
What?
The Greek culture or something like
Yeah, it has to excellent. That's an interesting idea. It reminds you of the Greeks because yeah, philosophy is a Greek thing, if you like. That does not mean that the ancient Egyptians or the ancient Indians didn't have their philosophy, but they did. But their philosophy is obviously practical, and this is out of the scope of the chapter. So I'd rather keep it away for a while. So philosophy is when we hear or see or read the word philosophy, it reminds us of the Greeks because the Greeks started philosophy. Okay, right. What else? So
I think
yeah, go ahead.
philosophy reminds me with some figures such as Plato, Aristotle,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Socrates.
Yeah, Socrates, yes.
Socrates,
Yeah,
yes.
that's interesting. Yeah, philosophy. From philosophy, you have the word philosopher. The philosopher is the one who practices philosophy, who writes philosophy, who explains philosophical concepts and come up with some of them. Okay, interesting. Okay, good. Whenever we talk about philosophy, we talk about two main branches. Of course, there are other branches, but these are the two most important branches in philosophy. We talk about ontology and we talk about epistemology. They might be very intimidating, I mean, the concepts or the terms, but just bear it up with me and you'll find it very accessible and easy. So whenever we talk about philosophy, people have in mind ontology and epistemology as two of the most important types and branches of philosophy. So what do I mean by ontology? Ontological philosophy is all about big questions. Whenever you study this branch of philosophy, you find yourself talking about the big questions about the universe, about the world. Who created the world? How did we come into being as human beings? What is the story of creation and how did it happen? Okay, so with ontology in philosophy, we talk about big questions. We focus on big narratives. Like I said, grand narratives, if you like. The story of the world, how the world came into existence, how we as human beings came into being and into existence. This is ontology. So ontology is normally about the what rather than the how. Okay, so what is existence? What is the story of creation? What made us what we are? Are we atoms? Are we how did we come into being? And then we move to another very important branch, which is epistemology. And epistemology means knowledge. So knowledge epistemology is all about the sources of knowledge. The sources of knowledge. The knowledge that we have. The knowledge that our parents had. What are the sources of those pieces of knowledge? How do we know what we know? Okay, so how do we know what we know? How do we acquire knowledge? I'm asking you, how do we acquire knowledge? What do you think?
From
By
books.
learning.
What?
By learning.
Yeah, by learning. Yeah, and how do you learn?
From
By
books.
searching about information.
I'm not sure I heard. By the way, don't limit the idea of knowledge to textbooks and going to school in order to get a degree. There is obviously more to knowledge. When we talk about knowledge, we talk about knowledge of the world around us.
Maybe explore.
Knowledge about ourselves. Okay, so somebody said that we get knowledge through learning. That's true. How else?
Exploring and going into experiences.
Yeah, very good. And how, yeah, Raghad, do you go into experience? You use what
Things.
in order to experience the world?
Our eyes and mind.
Excellent. We use our eyes, use our noses.
Mind. Mind and logic.
Let's focus on our senses first, like Raghad is saying. So one very important source of knowledge would be the senses. How many senses do we have?
6.
5.
5. They are 5. That the traditional.
5 cents.
Yeah, 5. Can we name them?
Hearing, touching,
Hearing,
touching,
feeling or touching.
tasting,
What?
seeing,
Seeing,
touching,
hearing, yes.
Tasting.
Tasting, yeah, tasting, yes. Okay.
smelling,
What? Excuse me?
smelling.
Yeah, smelling, yeah. So these are 5, and they are together are referred to as the 5 senses, and they are one source of knowledge for us. You get to know about food, for example, through taste and smell. You get to know about objects in life through your sense of touch, for example, and also moving around, seeing things. So we are all agreed that the senses are a very important source of knowledge. Do you guys agree with that?
Yes, we agree.
Oh, yeah, good. So we have the senses. Normally we say the senses, and sometimes we say experience, because you can only experience things through your different senses, right? So you get knowledge through sense experience, employing and using the 5 different senses. Somebody was talking about the mind as a source of knowledge, which we agree with. So the mind, right? So what else? So you have the mind, you have the different senses.
Maybe critical thinking.
Yeah, which is more or less using the mind, right?
Yes.
How about religious books, books of religion, the Quran, for example? Don't we sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, get our knowledge about previous or old peoples or old folks from the people that we didn't know about, Thamud, Wa'ad, and right? Did we know about them before?
No,
No.
from the Quran.
It was only through the Quran. Okay, so this is called revelation. We call it al-wahy, right?
We learn from their stories.
Yes, yeah, it's not about learning. It's, you know about what happened in ancient times through the Quran, right? But this is also a source. Okay, so this is called revelation, wahy. So how many sources do we have now?
Senses.
Mm. So we spoke about the senses. We spoke about the mind.
Religious book.
About, we call it revelation. Why? Okay. Sometimes it just happens. You know about things. You never question how you got to know about them. It's just that you have those kinds or nuggets of knowledge. Sometimes things look or seem or are what they are. You just get to know them. You don't ask yourself how, because there is obviously with them no how. When we talk about intuition, what is intuition? What do we call it in Arabic? Sometimes they call it al-badiha. Have you heard the word badiha before?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes they even use the expression self-intuitive. When we talk about a mobile that is so easy to use. When people ask you how whether you will be able to use it, you say yes, yeah. I mean the interface is very self-intuitive, and I don't need help, right? But this is called intuition. Are you getting the idea? So how many sources do we have now?
5.
5 or 4?
5.
4.
Yeah, 4. Yeah, we're going to make. Sometimes you have a combination of sense experiences and the mind, right? And this is going to be our 5th source. It's the mind and the senses. You see things first, you touch them, you feel them, and then you kind of make connections through your mind. Don't we sometimes do that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is epistemology, Adama. I'm sure there are other sources, but perhaps we can have any time later to talk about the other sources, like if Sophists, people who are embracing Sufism, and Sufism, by the way, is in all religions. They have their own way of getting to know about God and the universe. Sometimes they call it Arfan. I mean, this is deep philosophy that I'm not going to go into for fear of confusing you. I don't want to confuse you. طيب.
دكتور
Yes.
دكتور معلش انت اول قلت كلمة البديهي
Yeah, intuition.
طب معلش ممكن بعد اذنك تكتب السبيلنج تبعها في الشات لانه لما كتبت الكلمة بالعربي طلعت لي كلمة تانية.
طيب, it's IN if you're so it's INTUITION. INTUITION. Okay. Okay. So let's move to, if we have philosophy, we have philosophy practitioners, those who practice philosophy. And again, somebody said that philosophy reminds her of Greece, ancient Greece, and the Greeks. Yeah, and that's true. This is the official start of philosophy in the world. People say that the Greeks, ancient Greeks, were the first people to philosophize. Again, this is very debatable because you have other cultures and civilizations that came before the Greeks, and they also have their own brand of philosophy. But their philosophy was, for the most part, practical philosophy. The difference between Greek philosophy and the other types of philosophies or philosophy would be the fact that the Greeks depended heavily on the mind. Of course, we're going to have Aristotle, who is going to use both the mind and the senses. But for the most part, when we talk about Greek philosophy, we talk about the mind, using the mind, especially with Plato, who is a mind philosopher, or obviously the first one. And his philosophy is normally referred to as idealistic philosophy. Idealistic from the word idea, not ideal, where the idea is obviously it comes from the mind. We'll talk about that later. So philosophers, when we talk about philosophers, we talk about people like Socrates, people like Plato and Aristotle. Excuse me. And these are Greek philosophers, ancient Greek philosophers, and they focus on the mind, especially with Socrates and Plato. And this is their order of appearance. This is how they came to life. Socrates happens to be the oldest, and then Plato after him, and then Aristotle after them. And they happen to know each other. Socrates is the teacher of Plato, and Plato is the teacher of Aristotle. Are you getting the idea? Again, one word, one keyword can sum up every and each one of them. Socrates was a moral philosopher who depends on the mind in order to explain moral issues. Plato was a rational philosopher who depends on the mind in explaining everything and in figuring out phenomena. And Aristotle was an empirical philosopher. Empirical means that he depends on physical evidence in order to prove something. And of course, if you depend on physical evidence, it means that you use your senses. So with Aristotle, you have sense experience. With Plato, you have the mind. With Socrates, you have the mind and you have morality as his subject matter.
Excuse me, doctor.
Yes, go ahead.
Somebody is asking you to accept the request to join the lecture.
Very strange because it's by default. Let me see how I can do that. Nobody's. I don't have any requests. Can you ask her to renew the request? Okay. So obviously I'm not going to wait. I have other things to do. Okay, fine. So again, these are the philosophers that we are doing in the chapter. We're going to have Plato, the writer of the part that we're doing, the philosophical part, and he has Socrates as one of his main characters, which is obviously very strange. So you have Plato, the writer of the piece that we're doing, that we're discussing and exploring, and he has as one of his characters Socrates. Of course, Plato writes dialogues. He doesn't write straightforward prose where it's not like a book. You normally have dialogues and you have people discussing things. So one of those people who discuss things happens to be Socrates. And Socrates died before Plato wrote this kind of dialogue. So the Socrates character that we're having in Plato is not the historical or the real Socrates. So why would Plato do that? Perhaps he was he was trying to praise his teacher. He was trying to kind of give him immortality and immortalize him in his book, because Socrates himself didn't write any books. All his philosophies were said in the streets. I mean, he would go around in the streets and would stop people and start to ask them questions, and then try to kind of ask them more questions. So his philosophy was all oral and verbal. He didn't write a book. He didn't write anything. So we did know about Socrates through the writings of Plato and others, because they included him in their work. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known about Socrates. Okay. Remember when we spoke about philosophy, we said that with philosophy, we talk about the mind for the most part. So philosophers use the mind. And the mind is all about logic and reasoning. Okay? So you know what logic is, right? When I say that this is logical and this is not logical, we use it in Arabic and all the other languages. كلامك منطقي، كلامك مش منطقي. Logic is about making sense. So if you're making sense, this is logical. If you're not making sense, you're not logical, right? Do you think we need logic in life?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, of course.
Yes. Yeah, part of even the tests that we give you are all about logic. If I ask you to write about Dr. Faustus, and you write about somebody else, obviously this is not logical, right? So you're not sticking to or following logic. If I say that we're having the class on Tuesday and you come on Monday or on Sunday or on Thursday and you expect me to give the class, obviously this is not logical, because we agreed on Tuesday. So logic is all over the place. Whatever we do is bound by the rules of logic. Okay? Of course, if we talk about logic, we talk about reasoning. Reasoning means that how you kind of figure out things, how you understand things. Okay? So when we talk about reasoning and we talk about logic, we talk about ways of achieving good logic and good reasoning. And those ways are normally known as either deductive reasoning or inductive reasoning. Deductive and inductive. Again, these are ways of getting to know more about the world. They help you get knowledge and understand things. So it wouldn't be enough to have knowledge. صح? You need to also understand it. How do we understand it? How do we understand the books that we have? How do we understand the world? What do we use in order to understand the world and everything?
Our brain.
Our brains, our mind. Excellent. We use our mind. Okay.
Yeah.
And our mind, like I'm saying, has two very important processes. They are either the deductive process or the inductive process. So what's the difference? Are they the same? Obviously, if we're having them here, means that they are different. Otherwise, they could have gone with one name or one label, not two. So what do we call them in Arabic? Perhaps that would make them easier to you. Deductive means istintag, okay, or istidlal, while inductive means istiqra. Okay. What's the difference when I say istintag? Deductive, you deduce, you make inferences. Inferences means that sometimes I give you a piece of reading and I tell you to read it and then come back to me with ideas. Or I ask you about the writer, whether he is happy or sad, whether he is logical or not, whether he is kind of approving for or against something. How could you do that? So you have a text, you go to the text, you read the text, and then you come up with key words that you put together, and then you come up with a conclusion. You say that, yeah, he is happy. He is against this or against that. Okay? Are you getting the idea? So
Yes.
this is called inferencing or deduction, istintag. Okay. Which is obviously a very nice reasoning tool, and people getting by using it. The problem with deduction is that our conclusions are not exhaustive. Exhaustive means that you cannot, in order to make sure, in order to come up with a conclusion that covers everything, you have to see everything in nature. And this is obviously a physical impossibility. In order to check a certain phenomenon, you have to check all the examples of this phenomenon. Can you do that? No, we're limited. As human beings, we're limited. Limited in terms of space. You cannot be in Jeddah and in America and in India at the same time. We are limited. And also we are limited in time. We live here in Jeddah or in the Middle East for a number of years, and then we are no more. So how can I judge the phenomenon in the past? I wasn't born. How can I judge the phenomenon in the future? I will be no more in 50 or 60 or more years, right? But this is the problem with the deductive method of reasoning, the fact that you cannot trust the results. Okay, so let's move to inductive. Inductive reasoning would be the opposite. By the way, deductive is a very intellectual way of doing stuff. You put things together and then you use your mind in order to connect them together.
Is it like analyzing?
Of course, it has a bit of analyzing to it. You have to analyze things. Inductive, on the other hand, is empirical. Empirical in the sense that you need to check the things using your sense experience, the different senses. Inductive is about discovering things, is about investigating and checking and rechecking. So, like I said, which of them is rational, is using the mind, and which of them is using the senses? So, like I said, deductive is using the mind, while inductive is using the senses. We call then the inductive method the empirical method. Empirical means that you use experimentation, you try things using your senses. What deductive is called rational. You use your mind only. Whether we're talking about inductive or deductive reasoning, we talk about what we call logical arguments. Logical arguments are scenarios that we give. Scenarios that start with a premise and end with a conclusion. I'm sure you all have done mathematics at one point in your lives, right? Did you do math? Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what they call them in English, but normally they say المعطيات, then المطلوب, and then النتيجة, right?
Yes.
المعطيات are the premises. I create a scenario for you so that you can understand the situation, right? Sometimes they use expressions like if this is this, that is that, for example. You use
If and then.
You also have then before the conclusion. These are all called logical arguments. Okay, and again, this is part of logic and this is part of philosophy. In order to convince you, I need to create a scenario where things are clear to you so that we can come up with the right conclusions. Okay, sometimes we cannot. Sometimes the premises are not correct, and if they are not correct or if they are false, you cannot arrive at the correct conclusion. We'll have Socrates using those logical arguments when he tries to convince people of something. So premises and then conclusions. So which is number one? You start with the premises or the conclusions? Logically, kiddo.
Premises.
Yeah, you start with the premises. Fardiyat, I think they call it fardiyat. Aftarid, you're making assumptions. So premises are more like assumptions that you're making. You suppose that something is or is not, and then you arrive at conclusions. Like I said, I'm going to this is very connected to the idea of logical arguments. We're going to keep logical fallacies for next time. I would like you to read about logical fallacies. You're going to enjoy them like you can never imagine. So I would like you to promise me to read about logical fallacies. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Let's move to teaching, because this is also part of what Socrates will do in the chapter, teaching. And we're going to limit ourselves to two styles of teaching. We have the traditional method of teaching, and we have the Socratic method of teaching. Okay, let's start with the traditional and then make the transition to the Socratic. So it's a method, right? So it's traditional and method. Method is like a tool, a way of doing something, right? And if I say that this way or this tool is traditional, what do I mean? What do you think traditional
Old or
teaching is?
used
Yeah,
by society.
yeah, I'm not sure I heard you. What did you say?
Traditional يعني old or used by everyone.
Yeah, traditional means old. Yeah, old, I mean, it comes to us from people in the past. It's part of our tradition. What do you think? The way I teach you, not today, but obviously I'm asking you so many questions and this is not traditional. But in the past, in the previous classes, it was. I mean, you didn't help much, but that's why. Perhaps it was traditional. I mean, the idea of a teacher giving everything, saying everything. What do you think of this? Is
Traditional.
that good? Yeah, this is traditional. Yes, because obviously. If it's not traditional, I would kind of ask you to prepare, and then you come and you give me presentations, and then I ask questions, and then you answer. I put you in groups in the breakout rooms, every 2 or 3 people working together, whether discussing things or right.
Like
We're not
in
doing.
when 117 we did that.
Ah, yes, yeah. That was not very traditional, right?
Yeah.
Yes. But this time around, because you're not helping, I am being traditional, and my method is traditional in the sense that you have a teacher who is saying everything. The class is one direction. It's not by means two. It's not bi-directional, which makes it boring, right? Which makes it yeah, boring would sum it up. Okay, but what do you think of today? Is it as traditional as the previous classes?
No.
No, it's not very traditional. Okay, because I keep asking questions and I wait for you to give me your feedback, right?
Yes, but I think also the past lectures were not totally traditional.
Mm.
You were asking some
Yes, I
questions.
agree with my friend.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously the Socratic method, because we're putting them against each other, you would think that the Socratic method is not a traditional one. Yeah, it's not a traditional one. It's a unique way of giving knowledge or teaching. It depends on what? It depends on asking questions. Okay, it depends on your teacher does not give you the answer. He asks you, and he even asks you to go and do some research and get the answer yourself, and then come back to the teacher. And then we start discussing things. Don't you think that this is better?
Yes, because we will be engaging in the process of learning.
Very good. Okay. And you're not likely to forget what you have been digging for, what you have been researching, right? Because it takes efforts and energies, okay? And you wouldn't want to waste that by forgetting about it. But if you have ready-made knowledge, like the one that we are giving normally, you get bored because I mean, you were not engaged, you were not involved. Wallahi. You don't have a stake in what is happening. You just receive. You are on the receiving end of things. And obviously, people don't like to be this way, to be treated this way. I mean, yeah, it may seem easy, but boring. It may seem easy, but not engaging. Wallahi. So Socrates and his method was all about asking questions, and then you come up with an answer as a student, and then he asks you further questions, and then he asks about the same issue, and then you would think that you found the answer, but when you come to him, I say no, this is not the answer. Okay, you get you get excited because and sometimes you get annoyed even. Wallahi.
For me, when I do something wrong and then the lecturer corrects me, the information sticks more to my mind.
Yeah.
So I don't feel sad for this.
You know what is even Socrates is not that way. He doesn't give you the answer. Yeah. What's her name? Roa. Roa. I'm sorry. So he doesn't. I mean, he just say no. This is not a correct answer. So people would come to him and say, "Give us the answer, Yaki," and he would say no. Go and dig deeper and come.
For this, it's a little bit annoying.
Yeah, it was annoying, like we're going to see. But obviously, his method is way better than the traditional way because it excites you, it kind of provokes you, and even though it is sometimes annoying, it makes you work and do research and stuff. Okay. So the Socratic method. So let's talk about how the class is arranged. Let's talk about the layout of the class. In the traditional method, the layout is very traditional in the sense that you have a teacher in front. This is what we call teacher-fronted classes, where the teacher is at the front, in front of the student, and the students are standing in rows, opposite the teacher, or the teacher is facing them. Okay, and like I said, knowledge goes one way from the teacher to the students. There is no room for reaction or interaction. So the interaction pattern here is teacher-students. Okay, this is the traditional layout. And this is obviously the what we normally do in classes, especially if they are not language classes. It goes one way. And I am in front of you, and you are now opposite. You're listening, and I'm giving. But like I said, today is an exception. Okay. So this is the traditional method or way. Let's talk about the Socratic method. In the Socratic method, you don't have a teacher standing in front of the class anymore. If we are in a room, in a classroom, and somebody comes from outside, and we're kind of the same age or similar, The one who comes from outside would not be able to recognize the teacher, to say who the teacher is and who are the students. Can you imagine that? Isn't that nice? Olay.
I think no.
Very nice. Okay. Look at this. Where is the traditional class here?
The upper left.
The one on the left or the one on the right?
On the left.
The left.
The one on the left. Yeah, this is me and this is you. I mean, I'm saying things and you are in. Very traditional. Some of you are even starting to sleep, right? Okay. Where is the teacher in? On the right side, you have a different picture. Can you tell who the teacher is or where the teacher is?
No, it is not. It is not clear.
Yeah.
It might be the one standing.
We have another person standing too, right? Perhaps this is a student and he is kind of explaining something at the request of the teacher.
Yes, could be.
Let me make it, go to the bottom picture, the picture at the bottom. Which kind of teaching is that? Is it the traditional or the Socratic way?
I think Socratic.
Yes, where you don't have this, traditional class where the teacher is also in front. In the picture in the bottom, lots of people are standing. You cannot say that one of them is a teacher, and you cannot tell. So this is more of a discussion kind of thing. Are you getting the point? Okay. Okay. So learning. Let me ask you, how do you like your learning to go if you have the choice? Would you like to learn by instruction or by discovery? Instruction is what I'm doing, explaining everything, saying everything. This is instruction. Or by discovery. Learning by discovery means that sometimes you do some research, sometimes you investigate, and then reflect on what you have done. Reflect means that you start to think and make logical relationships and connections between and among the ideas that you have, that you yourself have digged and found and researched. Which do you think is better? To learn through instruction or to learn through discovery?
I think learning through discussion is, or through discovery is better.
Yes.
Better than instruction.
Let's vote on that. So how many people? I would like you to say something. I'll ask. Are you for discovery? Let's start with discovery. So how many people would like his or her learning to go this way? Discovery. Say something. Say one.
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 Only two ones? You guys are very traditional, like me. So you like it when you're learning is through an instruction where you have a teacher who says everything, when you have a teacher who wouldn't allow you the opportunity to discuss things. Okay, طيب يا خسارة.
In the discovery part, I think there must be someone that helps you.
Yeah, the teacher is there. It's, by the way, it's called, what's your name?
So,
So, it's called guided discovery. Who do you think is going to do the guiding?
the teacher.
The teacher, right? That's it. So, are you with us in this guided discovery kind of thing, Yatua?
Yes.
Okay, good. I would like you to read this passage and tell me what you think it is about. Yalla, read it, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Yalla, go ahead. You let me know when you have finished.
I'm done.
Okay. Okay. Let me give it a title, everyone. Can you give it a title?
Reading philosophical text.
Okay. Okay. This is inductive or deductive reasoning?
Deductive.
Deductive, where you put the clues together and then came up with a title, which is reading a philosophical text, right? So what did you understand? What's the general idea?
Is that it has many steps to follow? So many steps.
What has steps to follow?
To understand a philosophical text, you need to do certain steps while
Yes.
reading the text itself.
Yeah. So what it didn't say, but you understood and inferred from inference and deduced, what you deduced, listen, is that philosophical texts are not just another type of text. You wouldn't equate it, for example, with a newspaper or a magazine, right? This is more web.
It needs inference.
Yeah, it needs efforts. It is more challenging, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It needs from the person to link small details in order to understand the big picture.
Yes, absolutely so.
Also, it needs to
Yeah, go ahead. Go on.
needs to pay attention to details.
Details, yeah. Giving or paying attention to details is very important in a philosophical text. Yeah. Any other ideas? Okay. So then there are a set or a number of tips that you need to think of. What are these steps? If you're going to embark on a philosophical text, in order to read a philosophical text, what should you consider and think of?
The person needs first to start reading the whole passage to get the main idea of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. The gist, sometimes you call it the gist. Yes.
And then to read again, but at this time the person will concentrate on keywords and key details, and the person can underline these or highlight them and rephrase them in his own words.
Yeah, that's interesting.
In a more simple way and a direct way.
That's interesting.
Then the person will connect all these key points to 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 explain the whole text, but in a more direct way.
That's interesting. Yeah, very good. Okay. So I would like you to read this and see whether this is kind of summing up what we have read or not. Is it the same or different?
The same.
The same. Good. Very good. Remember, we started off by talking about moral beliefs. And we said that moral beliefs belong to the past. They are part of our tradition. Okay, so these are tradition. Beliefs are, ideas that you believe in. And those ideas are normally past beliefs. And we're focusing on those moral beliefs among them, because some of these beliefs are not, they have nothing to do with morality and stuff. These are normally practices, and we wouldn't judge them whether they are moral or not. So we're focusing on moral beliefs in this chapter. So we're approaching and assessing moral beliefs. So in order to assess something, what do you need? Assess, to evaluate, to give your opinion on and of something.
There must be certain principles you relate to them.
Yeah, very good. And you use what tool in order to reach or develop those principles that you're talking about, Yatwa?
Our mind and
absolutely. Use your mind
experiences
and your experience. Right. So if you use your mind, you are going to be called moral rationalist. if you use your experiences and if you use things other than the mind, you are a moral traditionalist. So the conflict here in the chapter is between those who believe in moral traditionalism and those who believe in moral rationalism. Okay? So what is it that we're assessing or approaching? We're assessing moral beliefs. Okay, we either take them for granted and accept them as they are without testing, and in this case we are moral traditionalists, or we test them through the mind and see whether they make sense or not. We challenge and question them sometimes through the mind. And in this case, we are moral rationalists. And what we're doing is moral rationalism. Okay, the chapter is about Plato and Socrates. Where do you think Socrates and Plato stand? Do they stand with moral traditionalists or with moral rationalists?
I think with moral rationalists.
Yeah, because they are philosophers, and philosophy, if you still remember, is about the mind, is about using your rational powers, قواك العقلية, your power of reason. Okay, this is what the whole chapter is about. Is about the conflict between moral traditionalists and moral rationalists. Everyone in the chapter is under the obligations of moral traditionalism, except Plato and Socrates. So are you getting the idea?
Yes.
Okay.
Was Aristotle rationalist? Moral rationalist?
Aristotle was both a rationalist and empiricist. Empiricist means that he depends on the senses. Okay?
Okay.
Which makes him a more rationalist kind of guy, because he depends on the senses and also on the mind. He doesn't take things for granted. He doesn't accept things as they are, like the moral traditionalists do. Okay, everyone? So what is it that we're reading for that? Where are we going to see this conflict between rationality and traditionalism enacted out? We're going to see that in Lachos or Lachos. This is Lachos is obviously Greek, and I don't speak Greek, but you would excuse me for that. So we're going to depend on extracts from the Lachos, and it's a dialogue written by Plato. And one of the aims in reading these extracts is to discover how Plato uses philosophical argument to question traditional beliefs. You're getting the idea?
Yes.
So what is traditional belief? We spoke about that, but I don't mind repeating. We said if you unpack the phrase, you have traditional and you have belief. You have belief, or beliefs are opinions and conventions and ideas that you embrace or believe in. Of course, belief comes from the verb believe. Whatever you believe to be true. Okay? Whatever you believe in. Okay? And part of our belief system is inspired by the past. That's why we say traditional. Traditional means that we are following the past in our beliefs. Okay. So as an example, I mean, we have those scenarios. Sometimes you get sick and you have your mom or dad putting something on your head. Like sometimes they put a piece of cloth. Sometimes they have, you know, leaves and plants, and they kind of boil them and they bring them in and put them where it hurts, where you have the pain, right? Sometimes you know, you cannot see the connection between the leaves and whatever is inside you in terms of pain and everything. Does it happen sometimes?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you sometimes ask yourself, yeah, obviously this is old. This is an old practice. Why wouldn't I go to the, you know, the drugstore and buy tablets or something, right? So where are your parents getting those ideas about the leaves from, and how good they are in curing diseases and stuff? Where are they getting those ideas from?
From their parents.
Yeah, from their parents, and their parents got them from their parents, and so on. Okay, but this is tradition, right? Sometimes we don't ask. We take things for granted. We accept things. Okay, those. Yeah, some people, of course, would consider those practices strange. Like instead of going to the drug store, you would go to al-attar. I don't know what al-attar is in Arabic, right? Sometimes you go to those stores where they have all types of herbs, all types of spices, right? Those dry things, they are normally very dry leaves, dry plants, right? Again, this is very traditional. And sometimes you don't question that. Because if you question that, you're going to question it through your power of reason, your mind, and your mind would tell you what's the connection between what you feel and what this kind of plan is going to achieve for you. If you use your mind, you wouldn't have this connection. But why? Why would we insist on following those practices?
Maybe due to the fact that many generations were doing this.
Yes.
And
yeah,
we're hearing that they were cured, so we think
yes.
that it's true.
Yes, that's true. The idea that they come to us from the past, and we get to hear that those helped people in the past, and why not, or why wouldn't they help us, right? Obviously, because we also believe in the past. We honor and respect the past so much, whether it's good or bad, right? Like, people keep saying the happy old day. We have that expression in English, the happy old days, right? Are they all happy? I doubt it.
No.
Sometimes when you see a movie, a black and white movie, people say, أفلام الفن الجميل, right? Were they all beautiful and everything? No, of course not. But again, because they come from the past, you honor and respect them. Again, if you honor something, if you respect it simply because it comes from the past, is that an objective way of looking at something, of testing something? Where is our mind? We need to think, right? And sometimes, and I'll tell you why. And sometimes it's counterproductive. Sometimes they ask you to drink something, something that is boiled in water, and they ask you to drink it because you perhaps your stomach ache would go away, your headache would go away. But sometimes it exasperates the problem. It makes it worse, right?
Right.
Again, because you're blindly obeying and following what the past is telling you. And this is obviously what Plato is against. Plato is not against moral beliefs in their entirety. He's not just negative. He doesn't have any, or he doesn't hold any grudges against the past, obviously. But what he is trying to advocate and promote is that people should use their minds. So test the thing using your mind, and if it's good, that's fine. If not, discard it and leave it behind. But this is an example of a guy who is applying a plant or a leaf on a swollen finger or something. Very traditional, right?
Yes.
In normal circumstances, you would take what for that, for the swelling?
Either a medicine that you drink,
Yeah,
or
medicine.
pills.
Ointment or tablets, right?
Yes. There are things like cream also that the person
Yeah,
can
yes.
put on the.
Yes. I think I need to stop on that, Lana. This has been lots of things on your head. But what I would like you to do, I would like you to kind of listen to what I said in the class, because it's very, you're going to find it very interesting when you listen to it, when you read it. And I would like you to read the chapter, so that when we come together next time, you have more to say about Plato and the arguments and everything in between. So do you have any questions, everyone? So how did you find the class today? Is it different, more interactive, more Socratic?
Yes, since we are engaging in the class, it's good, interesting.
Okay. Right. So, unless you have any more questions, we're going to call it a day. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we read a text, and we
Yes.
deduce it. Aren't we also using our eyes? So we are going through the inductive process before doing the deductive process.
Yeah, it's what we're trying to, what I was trying to prove was that connecting the dots and putting them together and coming up with a conclusion is more deductive than inductive. Of course, you would also, yeah, of course, you're using your different senses in understanding the text. It can be both, but I was leaning more towards the deductive method in reading it. I was trying to kind of give you a sense of what a deductive method is. Okay?
Okay.
Any more questions, anyone and everyone?
No, thank you.
Okay, so on this note and with this item, we'll come to the end of today's class. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Bye-bye.